How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Orson Welles. I'm speaking for the Mercury Theater, and what follows is supposed to advertise our first motion picture. Citizen Kane is the title, and we hope it can correctly be called a coming attraction.
You don't have to look hard for a shot in Citizen Kane to prove the technical brilliance of Welles' collaboration with Greg Toland. This famous shot is a combination of complicated crane movements, flyaway scenery, and optical effects. At the end of the shot, there's a dissolve disguised in a flash of lightning.
When Citizen Kane finally becomes irrelevant, it'll probably be a good sign that we, people, are improving. Citizen Kane is a story of a man, summed up in a newsreel, and then explored through the eyes of people close to him. An idealistic newsman with a declaration of principles becomes a jaded married man, aging through an iconic montage before an affair underscores a sink into selfish abuse of power that ultimately leaves the man to die with nothing over a black sea of everything he could possibly buy. Why talk about Citizen Kane? It's really hard to find something new to say about it in relation to the world now. But also it isn't. That's a Community reference. One of my favorite features on this Criterion release is actually an interview with a professor. She talks about how to make some of the more engaging aspects of the story, or at least her struggle to make some of the more engaging aspects of the story relatable to students nearly 80 years after its release.
What have you heard about this film? Oh, it's innovative. Why? Because it's like the only film where you can see the ceilings in a shot. But what's the function of that?
And I agree. I mean, look at this.
Don't tell me you're sorry.
I'm not sorry.
And then look how her eye turns into the eye of the window, like she's looking in at him. She's watching him, even when he's alone, because he built her into his monument, and then he dies holding the globe first seen in her room when they meet. I mean, there's so much going on. Orson Welles, like a lot of people I tend to look up to and not know what that means about myself, was so sure of his devotion to the arts that more than one source confirmed that he either had an ambulance on retainer or called one just to make it from radio show to radio show while he was working to find success. This was early in his career just to make ends meet. But he did have money, though. I like Orson Welles a lot. If you watch interviews and things with him, he's not perfect, but I dove in and swam through the entirety of the special features. The release from Criterion is comprehensive, featuring 3 commentary tracks, one of them new, several behind-the-scenes insights, special features exploring the impact of the movie, a breakdown of historical events surrounding the creation and release of the movie, like the Roosevelt re-election, World War II escalating, Gone with the Wind, winning an Academy Award, or the Maltese Falcon starting production. The set even includes a couple of radio shows that let you hear a bit of Welles' broadcast. One of them's Dracula. Did you know Orson Welles had a reputation for fake rubber noses? Yes? Okay, well then that special feature won't be as interesting to you. Orson Welles has a charm that comes from striving for originality. I've never seen an interview with him or anything involving him talking that hasn't made me lose focus on whatever else I was doing. There's a 42-minute featurette of him just talking about life, politics, and all manner of things. And the reason I said all manner of things instead of something a modern human would say is because of how hypnotic he is. He seems to care more about the life of a story than whether or not that story is true. And I don't hate him for it. So the story most people already know, with most people having an asterisk, is that when Orson Welles was very young, having already established himself as a pioneer of radio and stage theater, he was granted an unprecedented level of control over a personal project of his choice. He met Herman Mankiewicz, who wrote a screenplay called The American about William Randolph Hearst and his crazy house. And after a few, I think 7 total drafts were passed back and forth, Mankiewicz really having an influence over 2 or 3 of them, Citizen Kane was established. Then a super huge stroke of luck or fortune or whatever you want to call it came to Orson Welles when a director of photography, Greg Toland, who was already really well known, actually made an effort to reach out to Orson Welles and offer to do the movie. So imagine you're just starting to do something and someone who's like a long experienced person, like someone you idolize is like, oh, I want to make your movie. And you ask why. And he says, because you have no idea what you're doing. And you're confused, but you don't care because you have whatever it takes to be someone who's so sure of themselves that you're like, yeah, okay, work for me. He was excited that Welles basically wouldn't already know what you can and can't do when you're making a movie. And so he wouldn't be bound by rules and more often than not just encourage people to not stop him from doing things. Orson Welles fought for unnamed actors. Most of the people you see are new to movies. They've been working with him in radio, but he took his direction of radio shows and theater in front of a camera. He started shooting the movie in secret, claiming that he was doing test shots. He dug a camera into the floor, made fake visible ceilings with microphones above them, which made the lighting different from any movie that came before it. And he used tricks during and post-production to have the movie sort of carry the quality of a stage play. The whole thing about depth of focus seems to be aimed at making sure that people can have unique experiences every time they watch the movie, or person to person would have different ones, because you can choose whether you're focusing on the foreground, the background, this character, that character. He's careful in how he directs what the timing of certain lines and, who you're looking over the shoulder of versus who you're sitting there, all these different things. But the direction is only so far. It's still more about you being able to watch a stage production. He believed in editing, helping to tell the story, and made a ton of technological breakthroughs with overlaying film and matting things. It wasn't typical for a movie to open with this gothic aesthetic. In fact, this movie apparently wasn't even accepted as mainstream until Pauline Kael or another critic encouraged some people to see the movie as a comedy playing off of the news media and the way that, sort of a satire type thing. And it wasn't until this came out that people started to sort of rationalize it and watch it and see it over again. And this Criterion release really does a spectacular job of breaking all of these things down from so many perspectives. You will feel from watching this release like you know and understand the place that this movie had in its culture at the time and what it might have now. At least you could have your own informed opinion. But despite all this, one of the most appealing aspects of Orson Welles is how he's proud of his work while keeping his feet planted firmly a few inches in the ground. One of my favorite interviews of all time, that's not even on this release, is just of him talking about a cockatoo late in the movie, really late in the movie.
Everybody remembers that one scene where you suddenly cut to a cockatoo screeching just before...
That was to wake up the audience.
It's as simple
That's
as
the entire significance of the cockatoo.
I just can't get I can't get a pretentious answer out of you. We will be back after message. Stay where you are.
In order to do that, they had to rip out the background, and so the cockatoo's eye is missing a pupil, and is what seems like something straight out of hell. In regards to the Rosebud mystery, Welles noted that it's an aspect he tried to have removed from the movie, calling it Dollar Book Freud, which is hilarious. The commentaries on these discs, one of them is from Roger Ebert, who is so excited about the filmmaking that he sounds like a sportscaster or a YouTuber. Then there's another commentary from Peter Bogdanovich, whose voice makes every play-by-play he gives seem like the most important thing you've ever heard. Roger Ebert said himself that the sled explains everything and nothing about Kane. The story is about the core of human life. Morality, beliefs, purpose, anything about why we live. And more than that, it's about who we are in our own eyes versus the eyes of other people. A lot of directors cite this as the movie that got them into filmmaking, as you might have heard from other reviewers. But so much so that, for example, the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the big warehouse, yeah, the way that was matted in, only the moving parts of the screen are there. The rest is just a straight Citizen Kane inspired matte painting. Steven Spielberg actually bought the Rosebud sled at an auction for $55,000 way back when. I think Citizen Kane is still relevant as a story that shows people are more complex than just good or bad, than the labels and boxes we impose on people. It reflects what passes in time, like a tweet, and what sticks. Charles Foster Kane is a hypocrite, and he's honest. He's privileged, and he's an underdog. He starts railing against conservatism with a declaration of principles, and then they are sent to him ripped up because of how hard he betrays them in the eyes of the people closest to him. And he's corrupt by his power and wealth, which we just keep seeing time and again. He's unfaithful, but he wants to love and be loved, but he might not be able to. We don't even have his perspective on his life in this movie. And those people that knew him have just as many flaws. I mean, they support him and they admire him. However, I don't think Citizen Kane is the greatest film of all time. For all its inspiration and originality, another featurette on this release talks about the influences visually that even Citizen Kane is taking from, what inspired it. The man is named Robert Carringer, and he points out some inspirations for like the snow globe that are in other movies. And, you know, the gothic architecture of like Xanadu and different images in there, the windows. I think identifying it as the greatest movie ever speaks more to the person saying it than it says anything about the movie. That person's beliefs about American idealism, moral supremacy, and the inflated weight of political and capitalist consequences on American and world culture. Even Roger Ebert noted he chose it as his favorite film mostly because people asked him to pick one, not because it's untouchable. Untouchables is a Brian De Palma movie about stairs. Orson Welles is not perfect. He understood there were problems with brown and blackface performances, but included them in his productions. He took sort of the Shining treatment to Dorothy Common-Gore, who played Susan Alexander, the lead, in the name of supporting her performance. And then most of the rest of recorded history is her apologizing to the woman that she may or may not have been based off of. Like, they inadvertently insulted the woman William Randolph Hearst had an affair for, and they felt regret for that more than the way they treated her to help her performance feel genuine. And that actress sort of, you know, like all of them are proud of the movie, but she sort of faded out of fame after this movie. I don't know everything about why, but hey, it sucks. In 2012, Vertigo actually unseated Citizen Kane as the reported best movie of all time. But, I mean, again, all this is influenced by bias and personal experience. But overall, I'd have to argue that a movie influenced by Citizen Kane could be more entertaining and use the same tools and, you know, storytelling and equipment tools used here to shape a more engaging movie. Originality is amazing and inspirational, but it isn't everything. The Batman just came out in 2022. There's use of depth, montage editing, lighting that's inspired by classic noir. You don't have the Batman without David Fincher's Seven. You don't have Seven without Chinatown. You don't have Chinatown without classic film noir. And you don't have classic film noir without Citizen Kane. This echo, I believe this is the key that keeps the legacy of this movie alive. This story includes the stories behind it and the ones that will continue to be influenced by it, both in movies and outside of them. And in that respect, I have something to say about it that is possibly unique, possibly, and new. You see, I've been lying to you. This is not my copy of Citizen Kane. this is. What you can see from the back of these is that they have the same serial number. My copy was sold to me on eBay because of the defective disc. I don't know how many copies of Citizen Kane on 4K from the Criterion Collection were produced at the start. Okay? I don't know how many defective Blu-rays there are, but when this was released, it has the same restoration, just at a lower quality, except they made a mistake. The Blu-ray disc, about 30 minutes in, is faulty. The image washes out. It becomes faint, lighter gray. I pre-ordered this disc from Barnes & Noble, but Barnes & Noble didn't give out those pre-orders. And for people who did pick up the movie when it was released in stores, there was a recall protocol put in place that looks like this. They asked people to straight up show proof that a disc was destroyed, or send in the defective disc, not caring about how it ends up showing up, in order to receive a replacement and a $10 gift certificate. And instantly, this became something that I knew was going to be an incredibly rare product. I mean, I have a Blu-ray, and I can watch the restoration on 4K because I have a relationship with a friend who also loves movies and also bought the movie. I got to watch this on 4K. By the way, it's gorgeous. Especially, I mean, you're watching a movie from the 1940s, so grain of salt. But hey, it's Citizen Kane on 4K, and it's well worth a watch. And it's probably well worth a purchase. But very few people have the defective disc. And I don't know if I do either. They have the same serial code. Okay? Now, they're supposed to be different serial numbers, but I took screenshots from another YouTuber who I'm super thankful for, and you'll be able to find a link to their channel and their video in the description, who shared an unboxing of Citizen Kane, I believe before the disc had been corrected or returned, and his case has the same serial code. Now, even though there is supposed to be a different number identifying the replacement disc as distinct from the original disc, I'll never know while I continually try to find my feet in engaging with movies however possible and sustain a presence and maybe one day have a platform. I want this to be a time capsule. I can borrow and watch this movie as long as I sustain my friendship. I share this story with someone who matters to me. The integrity of this sealed collectible is so far intact. I will never be sure that I have the actual defective disc, though, because I would have to open the package in order to confirm that. This is what Citizen Kane means to me. Possibility. A good story. And I can think of no more perfect way to hold it in a collection. You and I know there's only a couple of possibilities of what's in there. It's not a mystery box, but there's only a couple of possibilities. And I can never be sure of what this is without losing something. Thank you so much if you made it through this. And I'll see you soon.